Hi, I'm Bob. Welcome back to the step-by-step solutions to the exercises for the textbook Microeconomics Theory and Applications with Calculus, the 5th edition, by Professor Jeffrey Perloff. We will solve the rest of the exercises for Chapter 2, Supply and Demand. Let's find answers to exercise 7.1. After the hurricane damaged a substantial portion of the nation's oil refining capacity in 2005, the price of gasoline shot up around the country. In 2006, many state and federal elected officials called for price controls. Had they been imposed, what effect would price controls have had? Who would have benefited and who would have been harmed by the controls? Use a supply and demand diagram to illustrate your answers. We consider the case after the hurricane. Without the price control, the equilibrium is E, where the equilibrium price is P and the equilibrium quantity is Q. A binding price control P bar lower than P causes a shortage. Consumers are willing to buy QD, but producers are only willing to supply QS. The result is a persistent excess demand for gasoline. That is, a shortage of QD minus QS. For those who are lucky to have a chance to buy gas, the lower price benefits them. However, more consumers cannot purchase gas than before the price control. Some consumers are willing to buy gas at a higher price than the price ceiling, but they cannot because of the shortage. The price control harms them. Let's solve exercise 7.2. The Thai government actively intervenes in markets. In Part A, the government increased the daily minimum wage by 40%. Show the effect of a higher minimum wage on the number of workers demanded, the supply of workers, and unemployment if the law is applied to the entire labor market. Without government intervention, the market equilibrium is E, where the wage is W star and the number of hours worked is L star. If the minimum wage binds, that is, exceeds the equilibrium wage W star, the minimum wage creates a price floor. The workers are willing to supply LS hours, but firms are willing to hire only LD. It causes unemployment of LS minus LD, which is a persistent excess supply of labor. In Part B, show how the increase in the minimum wage and higher rental fees at major shopping malls and retail outlets affected the supply curve of ready-to-eat meals. Explain why the equilibrium price of a meal rose. The minimum wage is a price floor. It is higher than the equilibrium wage without the intervention. With a higher wage and higher rent, the restaurants have a higher cost, and the supply curve for ready-to-eat meals shifted upward. Suppose the demand for meals is unchanged. The shift of the supply curve results in a higher meal price. In Part C, in response to complaints from citizens about higher prices of meals, the government imposed price controls on 10 popular meals. Show the effect of these price controls in the market for meals. The binding price control causes a price ceiling. The quantity of meals demanded is QD, but the restaurants are only willing to supply QS. There is a shortage of QD minus QS. In Part D, what is the likely effect on the labor market of the price controls on meals? The price controls on meals reduce the supply of meals. As a result, the quantity of labor demanded by restaurants decreases. It is a demand shock in the labor market. It shifts the labor demand curve to the left, and unemployment worsens. More people become unemployed. This exercise is an example of the unintended consequence of the policies. Let's do exercise 7.3. Usually laws place a ceiling on interest rates that lenders such as banks can charge borrowers. Low-income households in states with usury laws have significantly lower levels of consumer credit than comparable households in states without usury laws. Why? The interest rate is the price of the loan. Without the law, the equilibrium is E, where the amount of loans is Q star. The ceiling on interest rates causes a shortage. Banks are willing to lend QS, which is smaller than the equilibrium quantity without the price ceiling, Q star. So the households in states with the laws have significantly lower levels of loans than comparable households in states without the law. Let's do exercise 7.4. An increase in the minimum wage could raise the total wage payment. W equals W times LW, where W is the minimum wage and LW is the demand function for labor, despite the fall in demand for labor services. Show that whether the wage payments rise or fall depends on the elasticity of demand for labor. The total wage payment is as follows, where W is the minimum wage. The quantity of labor demanded is also a function of the minimum wage. Using the chain rule, we can write the change in the wage payment in response to the change in the minimum wage as two terms. We arrange the second term and form the wage elasticity of demand for labor epsilon. The result contains epsilon. In case 1, the elasticity is between -1 and 0. That is, the demand for labor is inelastic. The increase in the minimum wage raises the total wage payment in this case. In case 2, the demand for labor is elastic, and epsilon is less than -1. In this case, the increase in the minimum wage reduces the total wage payment. Let's consider exercise 8.1. Are predictions using the supply and demand model likely to be reliable in each of the following markets? Why or why not? In the market of apples, there are many small buyers and sellers. Apples are generally identical products. People can easily have information about the apples' prices and characteristics. Farmers can easily enter and exit the market. So the apple market is perfectly competitive, and the supply and demand model applies to this market. The convenience store market can also be seen as a perfectly competitive market. It satisfies the 5 characteristics listed in the textbook. There are many convenience stores and customers. Each convenience store provides similar goods. Customers have full information about the prices and quality of the products. The transaction costs are negligible. Firms can easily enter and exit the market. When it comes to the electronic games market, there were only a few major providers, such as Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft. They are not price takers, but price setters. They can affect the market price. They also sell differentiated products. Consumers may prefer games from one firm to the others. It is not easy to enter the electronic games market. So the electronic games market is not a perfectly competitive market, and predictions using the supply and demand model are not reliable. In terms of the used car market, potential buyers have much less information about the used car's quality than the car's owners. The sellers can take advantage of buyers by selling them inferior quality cars. Without transparent information, the used car market is not perfectly competitive. Therefore, the supply and demand model does not apply to this market. Let's tackle the exercise 9.1. In the challenge solution, we could predict the change in the equilibrium price of crops, but not the quantity, when firms start selling GM seeds. For what shape supply and demand curves, or for which elasticities could we predict the effect on quantity? We consider 4 extreme cases. If the demand is perfectly inelastic, the demand curve is a vertical line. Some consumers stop buying GM products because of the concern. The demand curve shifts to the left. The other consumers still buy a fixed quantity at Q2. The market equilibrium moves from E1 to E2, where the quantity falls from Q1 to Q2. In case 2, the demand is perfectly elastic. The demand curve is horizontal. Since the GM seeds produce more output, it shifts the supply curve to the right. The demand curve is unchanged because, although some consumers do not purchase, other consumers buy as many as in the market. The market equilibrium moves from E1 to E2. The equilibrium quantity increases from Q1 to Q2. In case 3, the supply is perfectly inelastic. The supply curve is vertical. After using GM seeds, the supply curve shifts to the right. Firms still produce a fixed quantity, perhaps because of their fixed capacity. The market equilibrium moves from E1 to E2. The equilibrium quantity rises from Q1 to Q2. In case 4, the supply is perfectly elastic. The supply curve is horizontal. The equilibrium moves from E1 to E2. The equilibrium quantity falls from Q1 to Q2. Let's solve the last exercise 9.2. Soon after the United States revealed the discovery of a single case of mad cow disease in December 2003, more than 40 countries slapped an embargo on U.S. beef. In addition, some U.S. consumers stopped eating beef. In the 3 weeks after the discovery, the quantity sold increased by 43% during the last week of October 2003, and the U.S. price in January 2004 fell by about 15%. Use supply and demand diagrams to explain why these events occurred. The embargo on U.S. beef was a supply shock. It shifted the domestic supply curve to the right from S1 to S2. Some U.S. consumers stopped eating beef, which was a demand shock. It shifted the domestic demand curve to the left from D1 to D2. The graph shows a large shift in the supply curve and a small shift in the demand curve. The market equilibrium moved from E1 to E2. The equilibrium price fell and the equilibrium quantity rose. Thank you so much for solving all the problems in Chapter 2 with me in the past few days. See you soon in the next chapter. Take care. Thank you for watching this video and subscribing to my YouTube channel. See you next time.